Tallboys and Trackmasters is brought to you by Expert Exhaust. Expect more for your money. MTB Shock Dock, your choice for suspension needs. High Gear Success. From helping racers get sponsored to motorsports event operation and promotion, shift your passion into high gear. And by Cycle Mart, your motorcycle parts store.
So I need to switch up to some light here.
Truly is a tale as old as time. Whatever gets you to look for.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to episode 48 of Tallboys
and Trackmasters.
The nectar of the gods, baby. Woo! This one's a little foamy.
Yeah, mine is too. A little shook up.
We're all shook up. It's good to be back, man. Feel like we've been off for like a year.
It was a very long 1 week hiatus.
Very long. How was your week, man? How was the time off?
Well, it's mostly consumed with work. Did a little bit of bike maintenance. Got out and did some hiking and had some ambitions to go ride Sunday, but didn't quite pan out. I know it sounds a little sissified, but I get tired of the mud and the muck after a while. So kind of waiting for things to dry out and tack up a little bit before I get back out there.
That is the
unfortunate. Fetterman, I don't know, several weeks ago, and it was just a complete sludge fest.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, this time of year, it's deceptive. It's like things start warming up and you get that itch to ride, but man, the trails are nasty right now.
It's you still have all the leaves from fall that have partially decomposed. You got all those layered up on top of each other, and then like a nice 2-inch thick layer of mud. So you barely even breathe on your brake, and your tires trying to come out from under you, and
just a recipe. Yeah, recipe for disaster.
Yep,
yeah, it was nice to take a little bit of a break and kind of refocus, and good to be back though. I was looking forward to this one. So yeah, we're gonna switch things up just a little bit. We had some pretty awesome. Well, I don't know if I should say awesome, but pretty big breaking news anyway. You sent me right before we kind of come on the show, so we're going to switch it up from now on and do industry news here at the start of the show. I feel like it kind of gets pushed towards the back, and sometimes I even forget about it. So if we put it on the forefront, I think it kind of hits home a little bit more for the guys that are watching there. So let's talk about it, man. Breaking news: Zhang Zui steps down as the co-CEO. He released a letter to everyone out there. Dear Cove customers and fans, it is with regret that we inform you that Mr. Zhang Zui's resignation from the position of Cove. He's officially departed as of February 28th. In 2017, the Cove project was officially launched, and it was really impressive to see him as a grassroots effort. He was the driving force behind everything in that company. I don't really use this moniker, but it was an Elon Musk type of way that he just forced his way into the industry and started that company, and with a lot of passion, which says a lot.
Yeah.
He cared about the bikes and everything, and steps down as CEO. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see what shakes out.
That to me is huge. That was probably the sole factor that I considered as far as Cove becoming a success at some point, was that guy was extremely passionate about what he was doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is all speculative. I see that they're just going to ride out what brand they've already created, and I fear that it's just going to be a complete pump and dump scheme where they just maximize profit, drive into the ground. Once the enthusiasts start stepping out of a company and stop having say in design, manufacturing, etc., you really open it up to some,
Yeah,
you open up to a point where stuff can get iffy really quick.
Yeah, part of me wonders if Cove's Dakar effort this year had anything to do with that, because man, it must have been super frustrating for him.
Yeah,
to see Mason Klein out there doing really well to start the event, and actually leading at one point after the navigation stage, which is his definitely his strong suit. But
yeah, he is really good at navigation.
Dude didn't shy away from any criticism about being a Chinese company or anything. It was refreshing to see that. How many other motorcycle CEOs did you see at the Dakar with their teams?
Yep.
None.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
unfortunate.
kind of worried that that's what was going to happen. Was Cove, had their debut in the Dakar, which was a huge deal in and of itself, but they had relatively amateur riders, and my thought was once they get someone on here that can actually push one of these bikes, it's going to start showing weaknesses in a hurry.
Yeah.
And it did show weaknesses, but he was there in the pits doing engine swaps, doing everything he could to move this thing forward. So I think it's a huge loss for the company. I wouldn't even bat an eye if they said, so and so CEO of Pierre Mobility Group, which owns KTM, steps down. It's like,
who cares?
He has so little say in the actual design and manufacture that it's not even a consideration. But this is on a whole other level. So we're going to see how it pans out. I don't have a good feeling.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, they're right at the start of releasing the 800X rally bikes too. So, man, it's gonna be interesting to see what goes on. Other industry news: the Benelli TRK 502 receives a heck of an upgrade. They've punched the cylinder out to a 552. It's now making 61 horsepower. It's 57 pounds lighter than the previous version, which is a big improvement because that thing was a heavy pig. Let's be honest. Lighter swing arm, more suspension travel, kind of more aimed towards a little more aggressive adventure style riding. Got a picture of it here. 19-inch spoke wheel in the front, 17 rear. It's like really a lot of. It's like a BMW, GS. Yeah. It's a GS, copy for the most part. Benelli, it's a Chinese-owned Italian company, but. A lot of people have been pretty happy with the TRK 502s, except for just being heavy and underpowered. So hopefully this is an upgrade for them. And last but certainly not least, Sherco is doubling down on its off-road and desert efforts with Ryder Christensen. They're going to compete in the score events, Baja, 500, 1000s, all the score different disciplines. The Dakar, and pretty much anything else that involves desert racing. Sherco is all in on that. So that's exciting to see another manufacturer stepping into the ring, man.
Yep, that is, especially since Sherco's kind of been like the, I guess, boutique hard enduro / hare scramble oriented bike. You catch them at like local hare scrambles, and you see them show up on the leaderboard and hard enduro like Sea to Sky or Hispania or something like that. So, I mean, the more the merrier. I think that's a really good proving ground for your platform. once you start into desert racing.
Yeah, Shirka is kind of following the same lines as Beta, I think. Beta started out that way, kind of a boutique brand. Now they're really coming to force in a very recognized and multinational and country company. So, yeah, Shirka is starting to get to that point as well. And I'm excited. We've talked about before about the new 500 dual sport coming out. So,
if the 500 sees success, I'd like to see him get into the 350 class too. I think that would be.
I'm sure they will.
That'd be pretty sweet.
All right, that's it for industry news. I kind of like doing that at the beginning. Kind of spreads the covers on the show a little bit. So
yeah, I like it.
Let's get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's episode: club composition. So basically, let's go through the pros and cons of the different types of motorcycle, and we're going to focus mainly on off-road and adventure dual sport stuff this evening, obviously. But, I think, joining a club, it really gives you an opportunity to share the hobby with like-minded people. You can gain some riding buddies. I know I have. Start a podcast with one of them,
I'd love to meet him.
Improve your skill sets. There's a lot of benefits to joining a club, in my opinion. And there's any and all types that you can think of, but really the main ones we're going to talk about today, I've kind of got it broken down into 3 different tiers, if you will. So casual, organized, and finally corporation. So Trevor, what benefits did you see in basically joining FDSR as a riding club?
Well, so I'll kind of walk it back to day one, whatever. This hobby is hard enough to get into as is when it comes to buying a bike, buying your gear, all that stuff. What's even more difficult is if you don't have the knowledge base quite yet for the maintenance items that you would have to do, or you don't have a really good feel on your technique. That was something huge for me, was the progression that I'd went through in the span of time that I've been with FDSR to being a pretty competent rider by this point. But to me, the biggest benefit was meeting like-minded people, having people that could help me push to become a better rider, having the ability to share tools, like anything from fork seal drivers to, what have you. I know there for a while I was borrowing Fred Miller's tire tools to change tires and tubes and whatnot because I hadn't bought them yet. And, really just forming some pretty serious bonds with some people. I mean, you have to have a certain level of trust to go out in the absolute middle of nowhere with a group of guys, knowing that bodily injury is a real possibility. So is a breakdown or something like that. So getting with a group of guys that you can have that level of trust in, I think, was huge too.
Yeah, I agree 100% with all that. I was kind of the same way. I transitioned from being a full-on GNCC and hair scramble racer into the hobby of dual sport and adventure riding. So it was nice to, like you said, meet a group of like-minded people that had kind of made that same transition. That hey, racing's not really all it's cracked up to be for me anymore. But I can still get out with guys that have that background and kind of have the same skill set and speeds, and really just have a good time. I can't, in my honest opinion, like the trips that we've done, like going to Brandywine, what have you, all these different rides we put on, just that's been my absolute favorite thing about this entire experience so far.
Yeah.
I agree. And I can't imagine not sharing that with other like-minded people. Now, I know there's lots of people out there that refuse to join any type of club or organization, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of downsides to being in a club as well.
I mean, there's definitely like a negative air to some clubs. I'll just come out and say it. Stuff like 3 or 4 Jeepers really kind of changed people's view of what a club was. You know, you had guys that wanted to go out and go wheeling, and this club that just wanted to meet at Buffalo Wild Wings with an RTI ramp and talk about how much they owe on their Rubicon still. But I mean, this, as far as clubs go, FDSR at least is, you know, a true blue, you know, talk the talk and walk the walk type group. There's no frills, no smoke and mirrors about, like, you know, a 40-page build thread of your GS that you say is gonna do a world tour that never makes it out of your garage. Like, about everybody in this group actually gets out there and does it. So that's one of my favorite things about it.
I would say that this day and age of social media has really opened that up to a lot of different people. You know, just from my experience, you know, obviously being a Jeep guy on the side as well. You know, at one point I was the Northern Chairman of the West Virginia Jeep Club, and anything and everything based on that was either meeting in person or on a forum that we had. You know, forums are dead these days. It's just kind of gone the way of the dodo bird and print magazines, honestly. But you know, it was fun. It was cool to, you know, get my feet wet in that type of realm and that type of world of trying to showcase the hobby, promote the sport, advance the sport, and bring in new people, shepherd the new people along.
Yes.
And try to do it and show the people in a responsible manner, you know, hey, we're not the type of guys to go out and drink a bunch of beer and tear up stuff, you know. On that same token, though, you know, whenever you're in a club, there's a lot of different varying backgrounds and differing opinions on a lot of situations. And unfortunately, that was kind of the demise for us, because you had 2 different groups. You had the guys up north, which we wanted to go out and use our Jeeps and wheel and beat on them a little bit. But, you know, we weren't out tearing up stuff, but we wanted to use our Jeeps for what we built them for.
Sure.
You had a group of people in the South that there was still people down there that wanted to do the same thing, but a lot of those were, like you said, they were more about, you know, doing fundraisers and doing car shows and that type of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just, it was different from what we wanted to do. And there was a disconnect there. And eventually it just kind of led to a separation. So, you know, Jack's got the West Virginia off-road group that, you know, we do that week-long adventure trip and all that type of stuff now. But, you know, when you get that many people together and you get all these different ideas, it's good and bad, in my opinion. You can progress a lot of stuff, or you can kind of regress and implode a little bit too.
Something that's been interesting to witness with FDSR is, as it's grown, like the little micro groups and stuff that have sprung up. You know, there's not necessarily a split, but I think it's been a really natural kind of organization of people that want different things out of riding, to the point where people aren't, you know, there's not one guy that wants to adventure ride and everybody else wants to go do hare scramble terrain. You know, there's a bunch of guys that want to adventure ride, or there's a bunch of guys that want to do hare scramble type terrain. And, you know, you find each other, you get your little subgroup or whatever. And, you know, you just go roll with them. And then we all meet for like the 3 or 4 detour, or like on some of these other event rides that we put on. But I definitely don't see like club politics trending towards any direction quite like you experienced with the Jeep Club.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that. And you know, I'll be honest with you, man. The more you get involved in a club, the more responsibilities that you take on. I mean, a lot of times it can just get to the point where you get burnt out and get frustrated, and you don't feel like doing it with it anymore. And I hope that people in FDSR aren't getting that way. But you got to watch for that too. And that's why, you know, I think it's important to break this down into the 3 different tier levels, you know. So let's go through the first one, and we'll kind of talk about some pros and cons of just a casual club. So, you know, in my eyes, this is just like maybe a loose collection of Facebook buddies that say, hey, we're starting a club. It's not really, you know, it's not going to be an organized thing. And I got some notes written down here. So, you know, obviously, you know, a casual club is going to be the lowest maintenance option of any of them. So there's not really a structure or a hierarchy or a governing body, so to speak. It's just, hey, come meet at the garage and we'll talk about what we're going to go do. It gives you a lot of benefits without a lot of commitment.
Yeah,
so I know that's appealing to a lot of people.
Yep.
So, like I said, there's no structure or governing body. Also leaves you not a lot of room for marketing or branding of your club out to people. I know a lot of times it's kind of secretive. It's a hush hush type of thing.
Sure.
It might just be a group of 5 or 6 people. You're not really open to bringing in the new people or the new riders, the beginning people that want to get into the hobby and have like-minded people to help them out with that.
Yep.
And you're not going to have a lot of protection as a club. If you're casual, you don't have you're probably not going to have insurance or liability coverage or anything like that.
Same goes with recognition. If you're
you have no recognition
that can't foster some amount of pull in a political sense over time, you're just going to sit there and watch as all your trails get closed up. I mean, it's just how it is. The good thing about a really casual club is it's just that it's casual. It's non-serious. There's not a lot of, commitment associated with it or anything. There's arguments to be made for that. There's plenty of people out there that simply don't have the time to put forward into it. But, you're one of the busier people I know, and you make the time for FDSR and to push things forward, and it's all a matter of what you want to get out of it. If all you want to do is go out and ride the same trails with the same couple guys, generally speaking, I know there's tight-knit clubs that are out there doing like Idaho and all these other big adventure rides, but it's just, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. I don't know I need to probably crack another one.
Go for that.
It's just kind of a double-edged sword. Pros, it's non-serious. Cons, it's non-serious. You hear these guys gripe all the time about, well, nobody's out riding anymore. This place used to be, packed on a weekend. It's like, because the barrier to entry has only gotten worse, not just financially, but it's crazy that people feel more isolated from getting into a hobby in a period of time when you have more info at your fingertips than you could have ever imagined. Like,
that's a great point.
Even looking like 10 years back, when the Jeep Club things were still forum based and whatnot, like, things have gotten somehow more isolated the more connected they've gotten to some extent.
Yeah. That's going to be my next point too, with, like a casual club, is it's more self-focused. You're not really going to be out involved in your community or fundraising for different events, and at the same time, if it's just a group of 5 guys, like, it's hard for you to put on a big event and bring people in to the sport and the hobby. And a lot of times they tend to be a little selfish, and that's not a bad thing sometimes.
That's something that we've talked about and struggled with is, what's the right number of people to expose these trail systems to? Are we exposing them to the right people that aren't going to come back and trash them, when they're riding alone? So that's something to be considered. I remember where my train of thought was going was, it's great having a tight-knit group of buddies that, you're ride or die, you can trust, et cetera, et cetera. But man, it's cool to meet new people. And think of all the new people that we've met just in the last, year, 2 years through this group.
Yeah. And not only that, it's not just, you meet these new people and you realize really quickly that we're all similar, and the group just continues to grow and grow and grow of, we decide we want to go on a big ride, like Tour de Coalfields, Kentucky Adventure Tour, what have you. You're sitting there thinking to yourself, like, if at first it's like, oh, when we first started out, it's, we could fit everybody in one pickup truck that we want to group with us. Now it's like, all right, well,
it's an event.
Yeah, it's like, we got to get 7 trucks together. We got to make sure Fred's van's ready to go. He can haul my trailer. Like, who all's fitting? And And honestly, I love that just because, the group has continued to grow, and there's just all walks of life.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see different people's situations, backgrounds, and what they bring to the hobby and the discipline.
Yep, I agree. Another thing too is, there's a lot of people out there that are really eager to share their local trails with people.
Yeah.
So you make inroads with someone at one of these rides and form a relationship and talk back and forth. Next thing you know, a month, 2 months, whatever out, they're wanting you to come ride their area, and someone else wants you to come ride their area. It's one of the quickest ways to experience more terrain and more challenge if you do that. Or if you're on the easier side of things, more sites.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really scenic gravel tour type stuff out there that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah, that is a great point, because it's so funny if you go riding with a new guy and maybe you're going along and you're taking your normal routes, and then guy comes up to you when you stop next, like, hey, have you guys ever been up this road here that's, a mile down the road? And you're like, no, never been up that way before. And then you go on it and find out it's an absolutely awesome road, awesome trail, takes you down to some other fun stuff. And before you know, like, that networking kind of comes together, and before you know it, you've got one hell of a loop laid out to mitigate the highway. But yeah, and that's something that's, to me, is invaluable. Probably the last thing that, a casual club, a lot of times, I think we kind of touched on a little bit. It's not really, a lot of times it's not open to beginner people that are just starting out in the hobby, which is something. And, one of the other benefits, though, sometimes is they're probably not collecting dues. It's not going to be, a for-profit type of situation. So,
yeah, there's also, seems to be with more tight-knit groups, is things trend one way or the other. You've either got a group of guys that want to get beaten, battered on the absolute worst stuff you can imagine every weekend, or you've got like the more easy gravel road oriented guys. So if you're somebody that wants to be in the middle, or you want to dip your toe into the harder side of things without getting,
overwhelmed. Yeah.
Overwhelmed, been there and done that. But tight-knit stuff seems to really trend in one direction or the other. So if you're in the middle ground, it's hard to figure out, where do I go from here?
Yep, absolutely. So, the next step up would be organized. And this is what I would consider FDSR to be under. It's going to be more structured. It has a better ability to function as a whole. It's going to benefit both the hobby and the members of the club. So obviously, I think Nick Hall would agree to this too, and everybody else that's kind of been in FDSR for a while, is we've kind of transitioned from that casual club, just a loose Facebook group, into like an organized, structured thing. We try to go out, obviously we were just down at West Virginia Adventure Travel Day, representing our voice to the local legislature. And you have more power, more pull. There's more connections in the group for benefits for everybody, honestly. You have a lot more potential for marketing, branding, and sponsorship, which is a big thing. You get discounts on stuff. That's great for everybody. It's in the entire organization. You have more protection as a group against, sue happy people or, landowners, litigation coming at you and your club, attacking your trail systems or what have you. And I keep harping on this, but, it gives you the ability to have a living document, like Heather Wilson would say. And that is a huge thing to me. I know we keep touching on this, and it's something that I keep wanting to touching on, is the hobby and the sport aging out. The older guys leaving, just getting to the point where they can't ride anymore, but the new blood's not really taking that step up and wanting to be a force in the club. And I will say that we have some great people in FDSR that want to try to do that. But it's harder for that group as a whole, if you're more organized, if something happens, God forbid somebody passes away that had all that information stored in their head and not written down, contact numbers of landowners or businesses that you deal with, that type of thing. It's really important to have that written down in case something would happen. And like we were saying, with the Jeep Club situation, if there's differing opinions in the club, it's harder for that club to just fold, because there's probably going to be more people in the background that want to keep it going, as an organized group. Probably little to no dues. I know FDSR doesn't charge any dues for membership or anything like that. Some organized clubs do, and that's kind of a double-edged sword in my opinion as well.
Some of these clubs also have private single track that you can go ride
anytime,
but it's very time consuming to A, cut in, and B, maintain single track, especially in an area where there's a lot of rain events, wind, etc. So I definitely understand that. But as far as like just charging dues just to be on a Facebook page, I don't know. Something I did kind of spur some thought. You were talking about this hobby aging out. It's kind of an interesting trend that I've noticed. Isn't necessarily people, younger people. So like Arthur's 22, 23, somewhere in there. He's one of the younger people I know of that are involved in this hobby. So they're definitely not coming in droves from that age group, but I've noticed there's a lot of people that are in their 30s, 40s, never ridden before, and just got into it on a whim. So I think that's really kind of interesting that the hobby is appealing to people that didn't necessarily grow up riding in some instances, or maybe grew up riding, got out of it, and then got back into it at some point.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I've said it before, man. I've got to see more sights and more cool things in my surrounding area on a dual sport bike than I ever have in my entire life. So it's such a awesome, easy way to get out and just see the beauty around you, not just on Instagram or, YouTube or that type of thing.
Yeah. That's what the coolest part of riding is to me. It's like you get to go out and have your own adventure. You get to go out and capture some of that pioneer spirit that is so hard to find anymore. Yeah. You're not going to find it at a crowded state park with the other 400 people that showed up to go hike or whatever. It's out there. West Virginia is, in some sense, final frontier of motorsports travel and stuff like that. And it's great to be able to take advantage of it.
Yep. One other benefit I would say that an organized club gives you is the ability to host events, which brings in more people to the hobby, more people in your area to expose yourself. Kind of talking back on that branding there a little bit, and obviously, what do we do the 304 detour? It's our biggest event we do. I know we do a Memorial Day ride every year that always ends up being a big time and a big event, but that's a double-edged sword as well. It's all about how much work you want to put into your organization and your club. But doing that is such a huge undertaking that I don't think a lot of people fathom. But
people who have never done it will never understand.
They won't.
So I'd worked in oil and gas at one point, managed projects, cradle to grave, and thought I had a decent understanding of project management. And I was like, well, how hard could it be? And I don't really play a pivotal role so much as like you, Nick, etc. And seeing the stuff that you guys have to do to get something like this put together really opened my eyes to the difficulties, and you really start to understand why there aren't a lot of events getting put on locally, because it's a huge undertaking, and you have to take some level of you gotta want to do it.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just sit and force yourself to do. You have to take some level of satisfaction in what you're providing to people, and you really are providing a service to people with something like this. The trails,
that's true.
The experience. It's something that otherwise wouldn't be around in this area if it wasn't for FDSR.
That's true. And being an organized club, there is going to be a higher level of maintenance. So, utilizing, your resources that you have, taking stock on what equipment you have to either put on the events, put on different rides, maintain trails. I know we've been able to kind of set aside funds to, buy some chainsaws and some different stuff to help maintain areas. And I think being organized, one of the key roles is you have some representation for your legislation in the hobby.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. Was you have a voice.
You have a voice. You have a collective with a decent number of people that want a certain law changed or updated or a road open. We partner with Country Roads Coalition, which helps get a lot of illegally closed gates and roads open, which we've had some success in this area for that. And not only that, you just kind of show your governing body. And luckily, we live in a state that's very open to adventure travel.
Yes.
They see that as a form of tourism money, and they're very, very open to that. Which we talked about in the land closure episode. Hearing Rob and Lisa talk about New Jersey, which is somewhere I would never want to live, it seems. But when you're organized, you have that ability to get your branding out there, get your voice, make sure the entire collective of the club's voice is heard, which I think we do a pretty good job of that.
Yeah. And there's really an organized club at the level of FDSR is, to me at least, kind of the sweet spot between potential and responsibility.
It's a good point.
There's a lot of added potential. There's a lot of added value being part of a group like this. A huge part of it that some people don't even consider is knowledge.
Yeah.
So, at one point in time, everyone was on the forums all the time asking questions. The forums have kind of died. A lot of stuff shifted over to Facebook, for better or worse. And having the ability to say, okay, I have a 96 DR 650, when I go to get on it, it's bogging out. I've cleaned the carb. Like, what else could it be? Having the ability to ask those questions and get some answers is fantastic. Same as having kind of your own little soapbox to hop up and ask questions like, well, I was considering a CRF 450L, but I heard they still flame out. And people can give you, real feedback and everything. The ability to set up like an impromptu Sunday ride. It's like, hey, I'm going to meet at Hardee's at 7 a.m. Sunday morning. We're going to go do some of the hard stuff around Fairmont. Whoever wants to join, show up. So I think that's stuff like that's really useful. But as you work up, to where you're more involved in the inner workings, there's more responsibility. I mean, it's not like Facebook member 1000 whatever is heavily involved in the inner workings and everything. So you have to kind of determine what level of responsibility or what role you want to carry within the group.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's really nice about our club is if you just want to be the guy that comes and shows up and does an event, finds some trails, and you post some pictures of your bike or what have you, or ask those questions on the group, but you don't get any more involved than that, we're not really bashing you for that. That's your prerogative. You do what you want. And at the same time, we have people that come in as that and see what a good driving force this is and want to be more involved. Like I'll throw, Tyler Vincent out there, for example. The guy signed up for the 304 detour, and not only that, he messaged me and said, hey, if you guys ever need help cleaning up the trails for the event, I want to be involved. I want to help. And I could go on and on and on of the list of people that started out that way and have definitely gotten so involved in progressing not only the club, but the sport as a whole.
I think it can get you a new level of appreciation for the hobby too. Seeing
absolutely,
being able to share the experience with other people, seeing what value you can bring. That's the best thing about a group like this is, like you said, you kind of decide your role. Well, that means that someone who stepped into whatever role that they've built up over the years, you're a lot more likely to actually want to be involved in that level. You didn't have it thrust upon you all of a sudden, quite to the extent that some of these larger clubs just appointing someone suddenly to do something.
Yeah. One thing, you touched on this a little bit when we were talking about like a casual club too, is you'll see the focus of whatever the discipline is kind of broaden as you go up in levels. So like a casual club, like you said, it's probably gonna be more focused on either adventure riding or dual sport riding or some kind of hardcore trail riding. As you go up, obviously organized with us. We like it all. We like adventure riding. We like dual sport riding. We like hardcore trail riding. Every bit of the discipline, whether you're here or here, is good to us, and we hope that we represent that well.
Yep.
And as you go up, I think you have a lot more of a wide lens and a wide net to encapsulate a lot of stuff. But sometimes that can be a detriment as well, to where you overlook things because you're so busy trying to make sure everything's involved that you're not focusing on some of the important bits of whatever the demographic is.
Yep, I agree. That's where the beauty of like the little naturally formed subgroups and stuff I've talked about starts coming into play. One of the best things about FDSR is no matter what your experience level is, what kind of terrain you want to ride, how serious you want to take it, et cetera, you can easily find a group of people that are on that same level, and you guys can form your own little subgroup and, go out and have your adventure together. And you don't have to worry about getting in with a bunch of AA guys right off the bat that aren't quite going to have enough mercy on you or something like that. And, it makes things a lot easier and a lot less daunting for a beginner.
Yeah, it does. And I've seen that firsthand, man. There's been some people that come ride with us, and the skill level is all over the place in FDSR, which is kind of something else I would probably say is, as far as from a casual to an organized, is the skill levels vary a lot more.
Yes.
You tend to sometimes get people in over their head a little bit. I know we had some people come ride with us back in October that Tom King knew, and we sat down with them, introduced them, kind of showed them around the club a little bit, decided where we were going to go for that day. And, great people, but they really, really struggled even going down the gravel to Irontown Bridge.
Yeah.
And, that's like bare minimum for a lot of the stuff that we do. But, we tried to be good stewards of the hobby and not overwhelm them and help them as much as we possibly could. And you just kind of put that in the back of your mind that, maybe that member isn't at that same skill level. So if you're gonna put on a ride and you want to be more towards that area of the beginner spectrum, you can kind of tailor the route or tailor the ride a little bit better for the beginner. Or on the other end of that spectrum, if you know that all the hardcore boys are coming out, then we need to be hitting some hardcore stuff. We don't want to be doing 30 miles of asphalt to connect to the next place.
Anytime I've set up a ride with a few people that, someone's going to bring somebody new, I'm always explicitly clear beforehand as here's what we're doing. It's going to resemble like hare scramble type terrain or something like that, like creek crossings, a lot of mud, a lot of hills, logs, etc. I don't like getting people in over their head to the point where they want to tap out. But from personal experience, the times when I learned the most were times that I had to, push a little bit. So for me, at least, I think to a certain extent it's healthy. A lot of people have, other opinions of it. Now, it's not saying I want to make somebody ever tap out or anything like that. I don't take any amount of joy in well, we made it too hard for them, they'll never be back type thing. So, because I was on the other side of that fence when I started out. My skill level was pretty lacking, and the reason I became a competent and more confident rider was just repeated exposure to more difficult trails. Thanks to you guys, I'm a lot better off now than I was when I first started out in 2019.
Yeah.
So pretty good stuff.
Yep. I think we kind of touched on most of everything for like an organized club. The only other thing I would say is, organized clubs. And something that I'm kind of proud of for FDSR is if we've tried to give back to our community. We've took part in the cleanup day over at Tigert Lake. We try to donate money to various different charities and what have you, and give back to the sport the best way we can, and be good stewards of it as well.
Yep. That is something that comes along. This is my last point too for an organized club. Move on to the next thing. There's a certain level of expectation how you're going to conduct yourself. Once you start being affiliated with a larger group, you have to, you have to be a good steward of the hobby, at a minimum. It means no throwing garbage out, no cigarette butts on the ground, no, just respecting the land, no cutting fences. That's a big one. Don't be where you're not supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. But there is an image to uphold, and it's not just because we want to. It's because the people that make the laws aren't going to look kindly on a group of people they think are like hooligans or something like that.
Absolutely. Yep. All right, so that leads us to probably the highest echelon of a club, and that's basically like a corporation. These tend to be more for profit. They're going to represent an entire array of disciplines. So, one example that I can think of is the AMA. They're not only for dual sport adventure, it's all motorcycles. It's the American Motorcycle, Association. They're going to have a heck of a lot more power when it comes to, legislation for the hobby. They're going to have a whole team of lawyers. They're going to have a whole entire hierarchy and structure within that organization. Obviously they're going to charge you dues to join that organization. They can be a sanctioning body for different, events and disciplines. And, they can kind of be a collective of organized clubs.
Yep, that's a good point.
They're the higher echelon and the representation for that. And the reach is just absolutely huge when it comes to any type of that. And I think the AMA is probably the best example of, a corporation of a type of club. They represent any type of racing that you can think of. I mean, they're all over the place.
Yeah. Naturally, I have no experience with a corporation level club, but, we talk about political pull on a state level. Imagine political pull on a national level.
Yeah, you have legit lobbyists representing your club. Yep. That are in Washington doing different things. So.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about. But you start stepping up to something like that, the core purpose being centered around like the hobby itself kind of starts to dissolve a little bit, and things become a lot more politically oriented. Naturally, it's not about riding with your buddies anymore. It's more about, there's a huge component behind it that's just simply managing to feed the beast, so to speak.
Yeah.
You have investors, for instance, involved, advertisers that you're more beholden to, stuff that you're contractually obligated for. Like the level of complexity really starts to spiral quickly once you step up to something like that.
Yeah, and it's like you said, you're feeding the beast, and it's absolutely crazy to think of the network that's out there when it comes to, and having to control and corral and organize all that stuff is just such a huge undertaking. It's obviously going to be the highest maintenance of any of the clubs types we've talked about. And like we said, I can see, some good things come out of it, but I can also see some negatives. I know that the AMA does try to fight for a lot of rights when it comes to any type of off-road stuff. But it does seem like sometimes they just kind of get outshined and outclassed by other lobbying groups and organizations. And maybe sometimes they're trying to represent so many different voices in the hobby that they all kind of fall flat. They all kind of fall short.
Yep.
And really, they try to do too much. And when you try to do too much of something, a lot of times nothing gets done.
Yep, I agree. There is such a thing. You spend so much time trying to gather information from people. The information you're gathering is not actually usable because it's so varied that if you don't have a unified goal or a unified message or something like that, it's a lot more difficult to actually make progress.
Yeah.
Once you step up from, it's like levels of spotlighting, right? There's like no spotlight whatsoever on the group of 5 dudes that meet at somebody's garage and go ride on a Saturday.
Yeah.
But you start to garner more of a following, become a bigger name. The spotlight gets put on you. You're scrutinized a little bit more, especially once you start getting involved in like state level land use, politics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the scrutiny as you approach like a national level club that you gotta sit. So the dudes in West Virginia are lumped in with the guys from Utah, or vice versa. And I just can't imagine. I guess the good thing about most clubs the size of FDSR, they're very geographical.
Yes.
Because it initially started as people that lived around Fairmont. I know we have members all over the place now, but it's just very geographical, whereas something like the AMA body is really just kind of
it's national.
Yeah, it's just kind of floating out there. It's everywhere.
Yeah. They have so many different obligations. Like it's a full-time job. Everybody that works for them, it is a 1,000% full-time job. That commitment level is huge. Like, I'm kind of at the point now with what I do. I have a full-time job, but this stuff that I do on the side, everything. It doesn't matter if it's FDSR or the podcast. Trying to help with other groups put on different events and that type of thing. That it's starting to get to a full-time job as well. And it's hard to balance all that stuff. I got a family, I got a wife, all kinds of different responsibilities as well. So you find yourself at that threshold where, is it worth it anymore? And that's when the burnout starts to happen. So as you go, that I would say that, like, at the organized level, you can still maintain some of that balance, work-life balance. I don't want to say it's work, but at that corporation level, it's totally encompassing. It is everything that you do every day.
Paycheck for it. It's a whole different ballgame. Whereas now, like, for instance, if you told me like, hey, I need you to take over some additional responsibilities going towards a ride, which I'd be open to if you need assistance, right?
We definitely will.
But I'll help out. There's plenty of hands on deck that are willing to lend a hand. Whereas you get to like a corporation level club, it's more like, isn't that like your job? Like, aren't you getting paid to do that? Why do I need to help you do it? Type thing.
Yeah, I get it. One good thing I would say, and especially in the AMA's case, is the team of lawyers that they have to represent if something would happen. That's huge. That's something that not even an organized club is going to have, that type of pool. But I think that for all things considered, they try to do a good job of representing everyone on a motorcycle, and fight for land use, fight for legislation and laws. I know I actually did when I was, before I got kicked out for drinking PBR a little bit too much, my college days, one of my communications classes, they said to write a report about a current issue that you see a group that you enjoy is fighting. And it just so happened at that time, I can't remember, it was like 2017, I believe. Maybe not that, it wasn't that late. It would have been like 2011. There was a lead law ban in effect for children's toys, which is a good thing. Like, you don't want your kids playing with lead products.
Yep.
However,
they'll turn out like you.
Children's motorcycles and motorcycle parts also fell into that category as well. So for a little while, there was a stop sale and a complete ban on any type of, smaller kids' motorcycles or parts to fix the things. So it was a good representation of something that gets brought forward and is a good idea for 90% of what you want banned, but it hurts the other side.
Yeah.
And it was really cool to see the AMA step up and kind of fight and get, sub paragraphs in that legislation saying, hey, obviously you cannot create a kid's motorcycle without some kind of lead content in it, but they're not eating the lead and putting it in their mouth. They're riding the thing,
Yeah.
So it was nice to see the AMA fight that. I know they tried to fight a lot of the stuff in Moab against the BLM for trail closures. Unfortunately, that didn't work out as well as we'd like to. But having that pool, having that governing body and the lawyers and all the resources basically available to encompass all that is something that's really nice to see. I think that kind of covers it for the corporation side of things. Any other thoughts or points on anything we talked about, John?
No, I think I've
pretty much exercise the demons.
Yeah, there we go. That's what we'll go with.
So
PDR, the P stands for preacher.
Get on your soapbox, baby. All right, let's go through some of the comments we got tonight. Appreciate everybody tuning in and watching. First one, I assume this is from Lisa or Rob. Says, I've been a member of Meteor Motorcycle back in New Jersey for almost 40 years. We pull on the Sandy Lane Enduro, which is one of the oldest enduros in the U.S. that's continuously run by the same club. The Jack Pine is slightly older, but several clubs have put it on. We're getting ready to pull on the 86 Sandy Lane this year. I was a section leader for 30 years. I finally stepped down after last year. Feel weird being the old guy now. Yep. Chad Johnson says, casual is like friends with benefits situations. Fun for a while, but there's no commitment left. I'm sure Chad knows all about that. Let's see. Can't see who this one's from, but we should set a scale for difficulty levels.
That's Mr. Tom King.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
It would be nice to maybe ride around and have that available. Like, what's Fetterman Hollow on the scale? Well, it's probably like a 7 out of 10 if you're going to be an average, everyday, normal rider.
What if you're in a white Chevrolet panel van that's 2-wheel drive? What would you rate some local trails in terms of difficulty?
I would say DGAF. Don't give up because the guy just kept going.
You don't need rocker panels
or 4-wheel drive to get where you're going to be stuck at. Yeah, luckily you got the A team to rescue him out of there.
Yep.
The best way to improve your riding is to ride with folks who are better than you. That's absolutely fantastic.
That was Chad Johnson as well.
Yep, that's the only way you get better, man. Let's see. Kenny Sinclair, what's up, Kenny? Thanks for tuning in, man. One thing I learned during the KSR days, you cannot please everyone every time when it comes to trail layout. With a range of skill levels, it's very hard to please everyone.
Yep.
Hell, I even got blamed whatever it would rain. All jokes aside, boys do an awesome job. Thank you. Thank you, Kenny. Man, Kenny used to put on one of probably the best local hair scramble series out there. He knows all about it, too. Yeah, that was my my thought process was as long as 80% of the people are happy, we did our job. You're not going to please everybody.
Yep.
All right.
50% guys say it was too easy. 50% say it was too hard.
Yep.
What do you do?
You never know, man. Well, I think that leads us to our next glorious segment. I had to lay her down.
Did you run into some clippings? Did Barb take the kids? Well, Hoss, maybe you had to lay her down.
Tonight's clippings are basically what happens when you try to take a full-size adventure bike on a motocross track. So we'll let that speak for itself. These guys from Camel ADV, which if you guys aren't following them, you definitely should be.
I love those guys.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
I mean, that was
Gotta
really
watch when you
gentle.
put that there.
It was
Pretty gentle for what it was, yeah.
First of all, sir, you can't park there.
I watched a video the other day. This guy had they were riding in Idaho and was coming down this really steep downhill and just was on the front brakes too hard and just it's one of those deals where it stopped and then just pile drived him into the ground. And he's laying there going, knocked the wind out of him and everything. Before the guy could even roll over and set up, his buddy's behind him. You can't park there.
You can't park there. I sent you that one on Instagram the other day. It was someone went over the bars. It wasn't even that bad. It was like one of the slow-mo over the bars. Like you chalk the front wheel and you know it's coming, so you got some time to brace. And it's like the second they hit the ground, like, call an ambulance, call an ambulance. Like, just sit there and catch your breath. You're going to be fine.
Well, I think that kind of wraps it up for tonight's episode. I would like to make a little announcement about our special project we got going on this coming weekend. So, part of what we wanted to do with this podcast was to entertain, inform, and one of my biggest goals was to share and preserve some of the history of riding and racing in our area. And thanks to Brian Holmes and some other people behind the scenes, we're getting that opportunity on Saturday. We're getting to go up and talk to Tom McKee from McKee Sky Ranch. If you guys don't know who this dude is, we'll try to interview him and showcase him in the best light that we possibly can. Guy's been around forever, has his hands in any kind of old vintage racing. Used to put on a lot of ARMA events up at his property at McKee Sky Ranch. It's definitely something you're not going to want to miss. So we're really, really excited and fortunate to be able to sit down and talk with him for a while.
Yep, very excited to get an opportunity like that.
Yep, absolutely. So our plan is to go up Saturday, sit down, talk with him, film an interview. And I would say Tuesday's episode next week isn't going to be a live edition like this. It'll be a pre-recorded episode with the interview with Tom McKee. So we're definitely looking forward to that. Want to thank everybody that's commented, tuned in, continue to watch and stay with us. Shout out to Heather Wilson for being our newest sponsor of the program with High Gear Success. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Heather.
And I think with that, we'll sign off for tonight, and we'll catch you guys next Tuesday for an interview with Tom McKee. So Thank you very much.
Have a good one, guys.
We'll see you.